Serie C is the third tier of Italian football. It's broken up into three groups, A, B and C, going from north to south. I've started in the south because why not? Here are the Serie C Group C stadiums. Stadio Domenico Monterisi. It's never nice to see an aging running track surrounding a field, so they got rid of it. They've also added some movable stands at each end, and added some new seats to the pre-existing stands. They also brought the field closer to the main stand, so it's more or less a proper football-specific stadium now. Stadio Partenio Andriano Lombardi is named for both the mountain range that surrounds the city and a former captain whose life was cut short by motor neuron disease. Once more, this is a ground that used to have a track surrounding it, but they haven't transformed it into a rectangular stadium. There are plans to though. Stadio Ciro Vigorito was built just a few years later than the last one, but by 1979, the people of Benevento had clearly realized that multi-purpose stadiums were, to use the local lingo, a dead ting bruv. Their foresight has provided them with a stadium that has an intimate and intimidating atmosphere. Well, by third tier standards, I guess. Stadio Franco Fanuzzi is named after a former president of the club who happened to own a construction company. They were presumably the ones who renovated the stadium after the club were promoted to Serie B in 1972. It's pretty similar to the last one, come to think of it, just no upper deck to be seen. Stadio Alberto Pinto. In order to host the 2019 Summer Universiade, this stadium was given a slight makeover. The pitch is now artificial and this stand over here was actually demolished. Demolished is a strong word for something so small. They probably just used a jackhammer and a wheelbarrow. Stadio Angelo Massimino. This is the southernmost stadium in the league. It's one of two that are situated on the island of Sicily. Anyway, the ground is currently undergoing a renovation that started last year and is expected to be completed next year. They've already installed new seats throughout and added a new video board amongst other things. Stadio Ezio Shida. They actually started building this ground in the mid-30s, but didn't complete it until 1946. The reason for this is up for debate. It was either creative differences amongst the architects, or it could have been World War II. Not much of the original stadium remains. In fact, even since the aerial shots were taken, they've added some rather large prefabricated stands. Stadio Pino Zaccaria. Speaking of World War II, Pino Zaccaria was a local man who died in battle in 1941. Yes, that does mean he was fighting on the side of the Axis powers, but he was a good basketball player, so, The stadium gets the nickname of Inferno, which translated into English means Inferno. I assume it gets that name due to the warm hospitality that the visiting team is treated to. Stadio Alberto di Cristofaro. For several years, Giugliano were unable to play at this stadium because it didn't meet Serie C requirements. But a few years ago, they brought it up to scratch by installing a new artificial pitch. They also got rid of the running track and some of the seating was replaced. It's looking pretty tidy nowadays. Stadio Romeo Menti. Interestingly, around 10 years ago, the exterior of this stadium was repainted not by professional painters but by the locals, and even the players themselves. They did a good job, although some other less helpful locals have since made some uglier additions. But I'm sure they were just trying their best to improve the curb appeal of their beloved stadium. Stadio Domenico Franchioni. Although this ground is interesting in and of itself, with each stand being completely different from the next, I think the aspects that set it apart the most are outside the ground. Firstly, this grand entrance, a remnant of the fascist era. And secondly, the freaking huge water tower overlooking the ground. I say water tower, but there's almost certainly red wine in there, let's be real. Stadio San Filippo Francoscolio. Similar to one we saw earlier, this also took over a decade to build. They can't blame this one on a war though. To be fair, they clearly did have to move a lot of earth to create a flat field in the side of this hill. Perhaps they were using a jackhammer and wheelbarrow. It was worth the wait, it's really nice ground. There is a distinct lack of roof coverage though, but in reality it's only slightly less than most of the grounds in this league. Stadio Vito Simone Veneziani. This is situated in a place called Monopoli. And I'm thinking, if Tripoli means 3 cities, then Monopoly must mean the exclusive possession or control of the supply or trade in a commodity or service. Yeah. Much like Tripoli, the one in Libya at least, it is right by the sea. Sadly, you don't really get any sort of view of the sea, but at least the stadium itself has been livened up in recent years with the addition of these new green seats. Stadio Enrico Rocchi. Like many of the grounds in this league, it's old, has been mostly rebuilt, but has at least one remnant remaining. In this case, it's the pillars of the original entrance that actually survived bombing in World War II. But yeah, pretty much everything else was added in 2007 CE, and is all rather plain and simple. Stadio Donato Curcio. This ground has the smallest capacity in the league, just 1,500, but it's still over a quarter of the town's population. The design is surprisingly complex given its small size. I particularly like this corner stand, which wouldn't look out of place at a small minor league ballpark in Northern California, I don't know. Stadio Alfredo Viviani has an especially hodgepodge mix of stands, some of which go back a long way. In fact, this here is one of the earlier examples of a stadium roof that doesn't have pillars holding it up. It was built in the 30s and is thankfully protected from demolition. Other than that, this is kinda weird, but yeah, an interesting stadium all round. Situated in a beautiful spot right by the Gulf of Naples is Stadio Italia. You'd think that name would be reserved for a would-be purpose-built national stadium, but no. Sorrento saw it was available and took it. This, like some of the other grounds we've seen, has an artificial turf field, but these guys have a good excuse. It is at least partially due to the salinity or saltiness of the earth that made it difficult for the growing of grass. If you do manage to grow grass here, it's bloody well seasoned, I'll tell you what. Stadio Erasmo Loccavone. Many of the grounds in this league have had the capacity restricted due to safety concerns. But in this case, it's quite extreme. Less than half of the 27,500 capacity can be used. That's presumably due to the terracing not meeting league requirements. It is getting redeveloped prior to the 2026 Mediterranean Games though. Stadio Americo Laguari has actually been turned 90 degrees since it opened in the 50s, so is it still the same ground? Who knows? Who cares? Not me. As you can see, the stadium has been given a bit of a refresh in recent years. A new pitch and some new seats in club colours were added. It's looking clean. Perhaps a little too clean. Nuovo Redo Arena. Ooh, I like to see a club that goes against the grain. We've seen stadio after stadio, but now we have an arena. Like Inferno, arena is an Italian word that is also used in English. But not pastrami. Those who watched the previous video will know what I'm talking about. It's Romanian. Geez, the sprinkler bow really is one of nature's greatest wonders, isn't it? So there you have it, time to pick a favourite. I'm gonna have to defer to my future self again. Oh, good choice, good choice. If you enjoyed the video, or at least didn't hate it, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, have a good one.